So sometimes I like to think about the power systems or power scalings that certain shows have, because I one time tried to make a D&D campaign based off of Demon Slayer. Basically, a group of friends of mine didn't know how to play D&D, and I knew they liked anime, so I asked what they liked, and they said Demon Slayer. So I tried looking at like certain homebrews that people have made, and I didn't like it, so I tried to make my own system. And I realized after researching the show how absolutely insane it would be to do that. Because let's say you're using water breathing, right? We know all the moves, we know exactly what they do. I just have to input damage for each of the moves, right? Not too hard. But let's say you're using flame breathing. We only know about half the movements there, and if you try to fill in the gaps, the problem is flame blooming flame undulation, which is a defensive technique for fire, which would you assume is offensive, but the problem is fire burns. So if an attack is coming, you burn it away, which is why it works, but you don't know the rest. Or let's say you're using sound breathing, right? The description for it is that the user throws bombs and explodes them. He's not using sound. He's not throwing sound. He's using sound bombs. And if you don't have sound bombs, you don't have sound breathing, right? And like the abilities are not of sound breathing, they're of him. And so trying to replicate the system didn't make sense. But now I think about it all the time for like every single series, right? You have Overlord and Goblin Slayer, which are directly based off of D&D, right? Overlord changed the system a little bit, which is fantastic, and they have more tier spells 1 through 10 and world spells, and also they can use magic more often, right? But if you try to make your own spell, you could generalize where it should be, or you could just use D&D because that's what it's based off of. You have Goblin Slayer, which it is pretty much exactly where D&D wants you to be. It's the whole thing is D&D. They also have their own game that you can use, that they have their own system, so you don't even have to worry about it. Same thing with Konosuba. They have their own game system, but if you wanted to use something like D&D, all you have to do is role play. All their abilities are, you have to learn it from somebody, right? You don't just learn a skill, you have to learn it from somebody. And so if, let's say you can't find someone who can teach you how to dual wield or get the dual wielding technique, you just can't dual wield, right? But if you find people that can, you now can. And like that's the general idea. It's pretty simple. You just need to role play stuff, and that's kind of cool. You have Tenshura, which is basically like what has the user experienced in their life and what theme are they trying to go around. They have a general idea of what they start with, and that evolves and becomes stronger. Well, if you're a monster, if you're a human, you're kind of screwed. But then you have Danmachi, where it's very similar, the same thing, where it's based off of your experiences. You start level 1 kind of like a normal dude, and between level 1 and level 2, depending on what you've done, you can either specialize as a blacksmith or just an all-around adventurer. Some people who have luck or escape, and people who don't. People who are apothecaries, medics, right? And whatever you've done is your level 1s to level 2, etc. Every time you level up, whatever you've done is where it goes forward. So you just need to make a backstory, right? And then you have Mushoku Tensei. A lot of it is feeling, right? If you don't have the understanding of what it is to use water magic, you can't use it. If you don't understand how it is to heal someone, you probably can't use healing magic. But if you have the sense and you have the understanding of how a freaking thunderstorm works, then yeah, you could go ahead and use it, right? A lot of it is training, but most of the time, like, they don't do too much, or at least we don't see our main character because he's so freaking powerful. Like, most people don't study it for so long that we've seen the work. Like, they just have to mostly feel it. Then you have One Piece, where you have Devil Fruits, where it's literally, oh, I'm rubber and I can do whatever rubber can do, but also I'm going to do this, which isn't rubber, but I imagined it, so I can now do it. If you want to be flame and you want to, like, oh, because I'm fire, I can make a mirage that makes me invisible. Like, you could do that. Whatever you imagine is what you can do. Now, translating to actual details is harder, but you can do whatever you can imagine. So, screw the rules. You have things like Black Clover, where it's like, oh, they get powers and things that don't make sense, like flame chains that don't burn their prisoners. And, like, that's wild. But basically, it's whatever you imagine, and if you train hard enough and you have the feelings for it in the moment, you could get whatever power you wanted. And things like Hunter x Hunter, which aren't on my wall, but, Hunter x Hunter is cool. You have 6 different Nen abilities. 5 of them are categorized and they make sense. If you wanted to make an ability, you put it under that, and if you wanted to get another ability, well, you're probably screwed unless you figure out where it is on the Nen circle. But unless you just call yourself a specialist and now you can do whatever you want. And I just love taking apart the series by how their power system works, because even if you think about like Avatar, like they just bend. They like 3 of the elements bend, and then one of them creates it from the fire within them, and then they don't even get tired. Like I'm pretty sure they could use their abilities for forever, right? You could just sling it as hard as you want, but then it's just like how fast can the opponent beat you or get close enough that your bending's not going to matter. And that's the main thing. And it's absolutely wild. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen a bender get tired just from bending. Like they always are in a fight, and so you're never going to see them. They don't have like mana reserves or anything like every other freaking series. They just do it. And you can think, wow, analyzing all these kids shows just for that. I'm like, yeah, because I play D&D and I want to make some homebrew shit. Like, come on, isn't that cool? Isn't that awesome? I bet you aren't even here right now watching this. The video probably made no sense, but thank you if you're here anyways. I love you. Have a nice day.